Welcome back to another online lecture video. Um, Today we are going to talk about what we call speciation. Now, speciation, it means the formation of a new species. A new species. If we can recall the definition or the biological definition of this species, we will understand how different species, how they were able to be formed. Because in our biological definition of the species, I mean the standard biological definition of the word species, it means the groupings that are actually or potentially reproductively isolated from other groups. They are categorized as a species if there is a reproductive isolation, either the post or the pre-reproductive isolation, then they are categorized as a species. Now, today we are going to talk about the forms of speciations that we normally encounter or that we normally realized. Now, to talk about them, we are going to look at the two main forms of speciations that are common in our world. They are allopatric speciation and symphatric speciation. What do you mean by allopatric speciation? Now, allopatric speciation simply means that the two populations are living in different geographical environments or in different areas, and these two different areas are separated by a geographical barriers such as the rivers, the mountains, the lakes and islands, etc. We name them. Now, when those geographical barriers separated the two populations, the members are unable to move from this area A to this area B. And as a result of that, they becomes reproductively isolated. So if they remains like this for a long period of time, the two populations becomes completely distinct. They becomes different species now, because even if these members here happens to have a chance to meet these guys after a long period of isolation by this geographical barrier, the two members cannot mate anymore. And even if they mate, they cannot produce a viable offspring or a fertile offspring. So immediately that happened, then they becomes different species. We can also put it like this. These members, after being isolated from these members for a long period of time, they are going to be different in terms of, one, their morphology, because different climates, environmental conditions between here and here. So their phenotypes are going to be different. So if there is a sexual selection, in this population and here, these members here would never answer to the sexual rituals of these members here. So it means mating is going to be very, very, very rare between these two populations. And different factors will motive or mimic these two populations for not have be able to mate in order for them to be non-reproductively isolated. So this is one of the ways by which speciation can occur, allopatric speciation. And this is the main hypothesis explaining how species arises, how speciation occurs. If there is a geographical barrier that separated two populations, these two populations, after a long period of time, they are unable to mate. Or even if they mate, they don't produce a viable offspring or an offspring that will be able to be fertile. Now let's look at the second speciation form, which is interesting, quite interesting. Symphatric speciation. Now in symphatric speciation, the two populations, they live in the same area. There is no geographical barrier that separated their living areas. But even at that, they becomes two different species. By how? It is very simple and logical. Let's look at it like this. Two populations living in the same area, but they cannot mate. Let's say we have different populations, population A and population B here. Now this population A, they feed on a particular fruit that normally get matured in April. And this other population, they feed on a particular fruit that normally matured in December. And let's say those are the fruits where they live. And of course, if those are the trees where they live, they are going to mate there as well. So you see that their feeding times are different. And their microhabitats are also different. So which means these two species, they will be visiting different trees. And if they visit different trees, their mating or their possible mating between these two populations is going to be very low. In fact, it might be completely different. Another factor is this: if these two populations, if population A is normally active at the night and the other one is active during the day, there is no possibility for these two populations to mate and mate. So with time, these two populations are going to be different species, because even if they come together, there is going to be what we call a reproductive isolation barriers that is going to act on these populations to make sure that they don't mate. Either their organs, like their organs are going to be incompatible to one another, or maybe their behaviors are going to be different. How the male will attract the female to call them for mating. The population A and population B, their sexual rituals or mating rituals are going to be different. The sounds that they produce to attract their females to come and mate. This population and this population will develop different sexual mating rituals, and that will make mating between them to be different, because the female of this population A will never answer to the male of population B. We have different factors that may make this thing to occur. So in short, to put everything together, speciation is just the formation of a new species. It occurs in two main ways: allopatric and symphatric. In the allopatric way, the two populations live in different areas. These areas are separated by geographical barriers that are mountains, lakes, rivers, you name them. So if they are separated by those mountains and the other factors with long period of time, the two populations becomes completely distinct from each other and they becomes reproductively isolated. Different species will arise. The second one, which is the symphatric speciation, the two populations live in the same area, but as a result of what we call biology now, no more geographical barriers, but as a result of biology, which is either their behaviors or either the incompatibility of their organs, sexual organs, or either the incompatibility of what you call their internal system. There is no mating that is possible between the two species, or between the two populations rather. So as a result, they end up becoming two different species. Mating is impossible. So I hope it is clearly explained, and I hope the video is going to help. Please subscribe to the channel and share and like.